Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, it is your good friend Dr. David Perodin from down here in the North Star recording studio, where it is a pleasant 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 72 today. This is beautiful for October 10th, 2022 in Wisconsin. So yeah, thank you so much for this awesome weather. Going to be 74 tomorrow. The doc is going to be out on his bike at least 40 miles, maybe more. I will post pictures. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. We have a tremendous guest in studio I will get to in just a moment. So again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you have not, well, let me see if we have the safety cam going on over here. We do have this safety cam. Thank you, Safety Cam, for being on. The Safety Cam is over here on the right. So thank you, Safety Cam. It's over there. But yes, subscribe to the show. We are within a couple hundred hours of being monetized, 190 episodes in YouTube, MP3 leveled audio, and then also blog posts at safetyphd.com. Down in the corner over there, actually, you can find it. So, you know, when I wrote The Velocity of Information, I had a chapter in here called Fitness and Fortitude, and it was about March and April of 2020, what we could do as a country to have a civilian campaign toward fitness and nutrition, right? Because we know those are axioms. The more fit you are, the more healthy you are, the less likely you are to become ill. And if you do become ill, you're more likely to come through that with fewer consequences, right? So I wrote about that. That should have been a campaign back in March and April. And today's guest, Megan Usui, is going to help us understand that. And actually, we're going to start, though, with how to understand the motivation behind fitness. How do we get motivated? How do we get motivated to work out? If you're here at Doc's house, you would have been motivated yesterday as I took about 15,000 pounds of firewood into my basement. I would have motivated you to help me. But yeah, how do you get motivated? What does motivation look like if you're a teenager versus somebody in their 40s or somebody who's elderly or somebody who's part of a family, right? So how does that work? So I've got Megan backstage, going to bring her in the show in just a moment, but I want to give a shout out here to some people right away. Ron Wayne, Corey Slater, Misty, Mrs. Wayne, Solitude Surfer, and let's see who else is here. So, oh my goodness, Burt Reynolds, I don't believe you're really here. So, but yes, thank you so much. And if you have questions for Megan, please introduce them. I'm going to adjust my camera just a little bit. This is the camera that is being replaced down here in the safety studio. But welcome to the show, Megan Usui. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks for having me, David.
So I'm thankful to have you on the show. Megan and I have been in communication for a number of months, kind of, working out the show, working out the questions. And one of the things, Megan, when I wrote The Velocity of Information is I wrote about how in March and April of 2020, we really would have benefited from a national campaign on fitness. It didn't happen. And as I talk to people now, as I present, I don't have the answer to what motivates people toward fitness. So I know that you're going to talk about that today, and I'm very thankful for that. So first of all, thank you for being a guest on the Safety Doc Show.
My pleasure.
Great. So, and you are in the Seattle area. So what, it's like about 1 p.m. right there per the time zone change, right? It's probably 1 o'clock and sunny.
Well, it's a little further in the afternoon. I'm done with my client load for the day, and we've had a lot of forest fires.
Oh my goodness.
Cascades. So we've all been stuck inside, not because of a pandemic, but because of horrible air quality. And it's been quite oppressive, and this has been going on for, I feel like, a month. Our air
Okay.
quality's been awful.
Wow.
So I'm very jealous of you being able to go
Well,
on bike rides and being
yeah.
to.
The air quality around here is typically pretty good. We don't have much as far as like forest fires and things like that. Every once in a while, the coal fire power plant, will pump out a little more exhaust, and I got to deal with that when I'm biking. But generally, pretty good stuff. So today's show is fitness in chaotic times. What really motivates us? And we have fitness professional Megan Usui on the show. And Megan, I'm going to read your bio. So for those of you, again, watching the show, many of you know this, but for those of you unfamiliar, I have 3 monitors in front of me. The left are the show notes. The front monitor is the monitoring the show notes. The right is monitoring the stream. So if you're watching, Doc, look around. Am I trying to follow a ghost down here? Possibly, because we know that the North Star recording studio is haunted. We know that. People have submitted and say, look, the 18-minute mark and 7 seconds in back you, there's clearly a ghost. I get it. They're friendly. Nothing to worry about. I know it's October. But yes, so I'm going to look over on my left side here for the biography. And here we go. Megan Usui has over 2 decades of experience as a fitness and wellness professional. She has worked as a fitness director, personal trainer, weight loss coach, gym designer, and group fitness instructor at health clubs, weight loss, and biofeedback centers in California, New York, Virginia, and Washington State, including the Washington Athletic Club in downtown Seattle. She is the owner and operator of the David Workout in Snohomish. I think I have that pretty
Very good.
closely. And David Workout, right, David? I did a workout here of 25,000 pounds of firewood in my basement just over the last few days. She is an expert in personal and relationship coaching. Practicing what she preaches, Megan has lost and kept off 60 pounds for more than 25 years while raising 2 fit and active boys. A graduate of Sweetbriar College with a degree in philosophy, Megan is fascinated by history and human culture. Again, Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to talking about what motivates people. It's one of my favorite topics.
Great. This is an interesting question because when I present, for example, on the velocity of information, and I talk to people about the chapter Fitness and Fortitude, I felt that in March or April of 2020, when we were seeing misty-eyed celebrities come on TV and say, "Here's how to sanitize your phone." You mix up a little bleach and whatever, but don't do too much. And I'm like, okay, like I get it, right? But there's much more to it than that. It's an overall wellness campaign and health and fitness. And looking back through history, in 1942, the Committee for National Morale, very much helping a civilian population handle how to embrace and enter into war. Kind of, we missed an opportunity. We'll get to that in a little bit of that. We could have had this national campaign in March and April of 2020 to help people become more fit, right? And to become more resilient, to be able to resist the virus. And if they did have the virus, right, that they would be in better health and they would possibly have a positive outcome from that. So before we get into, so tell us more about yourself.
So you read my bio and to fill in any of those gaps, I was a person who was not super athletic growing up. I was really into dance, but I was not an athlete by any means. And towards the end of high school, I started gaining weight, and I didn't know where that was coming from. I realized late in college that I was a carbitarian, that I was just overeating pasta and muffins and cereal, thinking that's a food group in and of itself. I started reading some Atkins books that focused more on eating protein, which was admittedly not my favorite food group. At that time, there weren't we didn't have really the internet. This was quite a while ago. And so you're just looking for resources in the bookstores and trial and error. You didn't have all of the quick tips and short videos that people have today. So it took me quite a while to figure out how to modify calorie intake and to drink more water and all these things that are so obvious to people today. But this was in the late 90s. And at that time, I had finished school, but I still hadn't figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had been teaching group fitness. I could teach swimming while I was working on my weight issues. And then I thought, well, what if I learned how to be a personal trainer? Which was kind of a joke at the time because I was still a little soft. But I did it anyway. And I worked for 24 Hour Fitness and very quickly became not only a trainer, but I started managing trainers. So my skill set in people was an asset for me, but I was so fascinated with how do you put together a program for different people with different backgrounds. And I could relate to people because I wasn't an athlete. Most of my colleagues were high school athletes, and they actually had a disadvantage because they'd get frustrated with clients quite quickly of why can't you just do this? Whereas I could understand where they're coming from and where the malaise would come from, and not being able to achieve that intensity that's just seems so normal for fit people. So I just stayed in the fitness industry because it was the easiest way for me to make money because I was good at it, whether it was a personal training manager or teaching group fitness or always wearing different hats or selling memberships. It was always easy for me to talk to people. And my first question, I think for the last 20 years is,
okay,
how can I help you? Just starting with that, not making any assumptions about why the person had come in the door, to let them speak and explain what they as a consumer were looking for. And it's interesting because the answers to that are different. There are themes for certain, but if you went with just a cookie cutter approach to, okay, we're going to get you started and we're going to take your scale weight and we're going to do a VO2 max and you're going to show me what your one rep max is. Most people would run screaming out of the building as if there were a fire. So that rapport is really important, because when you ask about fitness and what motivates people to get more fit, we have to define what fit is.
Yes. So what is fit?
Sure. So there is, as a scientist, we could look at somebody's VO2 max or their strength of how many push-ups they could do. Obviously, the military has criteria for that of what is fit, how fast you can run a mile. But most people aren't thinking in those terms. So if we go backwards, I know we like to start with younger people and go up to older people, but if we start with older people, boomers, when they tell me about why they're sitting in front of me and why they want to get more fit, they want to do basic things like, I want to be able to get down on the floor and play with my grandkids.
Okay.
Very super simple things that we take advantage of. I want to be able to walk up the driveway and not be embarrassed about how much I'm huffing and puffing. I want to be able to wear pants that have been sitting in my closet for 10 years. And a lot of times fitness bleeds into physique, that people think about being fit as looking a certain way.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that more as we kind of go down in the generations. But typically for boomers, they just want to preserve the muscle mass they have. They're dealing with osteoporosis and they're scared.
Yeah.
So, have you ever studied any neuro-linguistic programming?
I have not.
Okay,
no.
that's a fascinating rabbit hole. We won't go into that. But one of the basic tenets of neuro-linguistic programming and figuring out how someone's mind works is most people are either towards a goal or away from a consequence. Okay. And that's a paradigm of how they look at the world. Are they more carrot driven, or are they running away from the stick? So that's one of the things that I listen for in somebody's language. They may say, well, my doctor says that if I don't start a program, I'm going to be a candidate for a heart attack. Okay, so that's somebody who is afraid of a consequence, and will use that kind of language to help motivate them to do something they know they should do, but they don't naturally want to do. So I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there. But if we look at our generation, David, yours and mine, Gen X wants to stay active. We want to be able to hike and maybe keep up with our kids who may be approaching their 20s or their mid 20s. We often want to look better. So we'll have a mix of things. We want to feel stronger. We want to either become more fit or stay fit, and we want to look better. We're getting ready for, oh my gosh, our 20 or 25-year reunion, and we're scared to death what that's going to be like. Our daughter's getting married, and we're scared to death of what the pictures are going to look like. So with Gen X, there's a whole host of what may motivate us as far as carrots and sticks. And I don't know if you identify with any of that. Because I know, David, I listened to a great podcast you were on the Sustainable Living podcast.
Yes.
And you talked about your story, and you were very transparent with the realizations that you were having and what motivated you to get started on a program.
Yeah, and that was a one of the most, I guess, authentic interviews that I've given, and probably most vulnerable interviews that I gave. And so just to recap that. So I was on with Marianne West on the Sustainable Living podcast, her podcast, about maybe 3-4 years ago. And at that time, I talked about how I was in a very high profile, high pay, high stress, high burnout job. And I took a vacation with my family, and at the same time, I was tethered to my phone. Like I was getting, every 30 minutes, somebody was contacting me and saying, you have to make this decision, right? You have to make this high stakes decision. And I'm like, I'm just trying to enjoy vacation, right? I was realizing that, I was having to tell my wife and my 2 daughters, go in and enjoy the restaurant that has the train that delivers your food to your table, which would be cool, right? But I have to stay in the car because I have to deal with this issue because the way that the structure was, right, everything was filtering up or funneling up to me or funneling down to me. But and it got to be a point where I just said, this is enough, and I left it, which was really bizarre in some aspects, to leave a very high paying, high profile job and just be gone from it. And I'll tell you though, Megan, it was the best decision I ever made. I completely, looking back, I'm like, it was the best decision I made in my life, for my health, for my fitness. I was also, personally, I was 240 pounds when I was in that job. My liver and like kidney function, through the your doctor would take the blood draw and say whatever, and she was just saying, these look bad, right? This doesn't look good for you. And I'd be like, I'm just under a lot of stress, I'm not sleeping, I'm doing all these things. And initially it feels weird though. It felt like a loss. It felt like I was taking a big career L after being on public television in 2013, and just kind of leaving at the top. It was very hard for people close to me to figure out, and some people kind of distanced themselves from me. If like,
so were you going through an identity shift?
Maybe with age, right? And my kids were younger, and one of the things, Megan, so thank you for asking that. We were having a garage sale. So every year we have a garage sale, and I remember helping my wife set up for that, and I would look at toys that she was putting out for sale, And she's like, our daughters don't play with this anymore. And be like, I don't remember them ever playing with this. Like, I felt it was really weird because I felt like I had missed time, right? That I had skipped over time in their lives. And it was very hard for me to reconcile that. And I was also, it was weird because it was at a time in life where I could just make things happen because of who I was, right? I was on public television. I had this PBS special that was broadcast across the country. Everything was flowing toward me. But when I watched the 2013 presentation on PBS, I was 240 pounds. You can see it in my face. I do not look healthy. I was not healthy. I was not happy, right? But
But
and
the
eventually,
producers weren't thinking that.
no, and the show did phenomenal, right? They brought me back in 2019, and I'll be back in 2025. The show itself was a huge success,
Right. So
and
you were a success, but your criteria changed
it
or
did.
shifted maybe.
It did. Well, and part of that was, sitting down with my physician, and she said, it was kind of interesting, Megan, because the physician I had prior to that was like, oh, you just need prednisone. I'll subscribe you, I will give you a subscription or prescription of prednisone and you'll be fine. And that wasn't the case, right? Like, but everything was prednisone. Um, and she said, you're not in a good path here. Like, I've seen people your age who've had heart attacks or strokes or ischemic attacks, right? That is like a mini stroke. And she said, you're just not in good shape. Like, you have to make a decision how far you're going to push this and know that your risk levels is very high. And so when I left things, like, it was a huge surprise. And I think one of the things too is it was very difficult for people close to me to understand this because they look at it from the outside and say, you had everything. You were at the top of your game. Like, and I'm like, I'm still at the top of my game. But it was hard for me, but I came to terms with it actually faster than the people around me, which was kind of weird because I think there's this thing where people, and I talked about this a couple of years ago when I was doing consulting in the state of California, maybe like 2 years ago during COVID. When I cut back my hours, like, people were like, please don't do this. Like, did we do something wrong? Like, what will it take to like keep up the hours? I'm like, oh, you're all cool. Like, it's just like I want to do other things. Like tomorrow,
But you were creating an inconvenience for them that they didn't approve.
I was creating inconvenience, and I also think they knew me. They knew I was reliable. They knew I was honest. I knew my stuff. And for them to transition to somebody else was very uncomfortable. And like I said, like, tomorrow's going to be 74 here. I'll be out biking. And that's the way I was when I was consulting in California, for like special education and school administrator stuff. I'm licensed in Wisconsin and California for most levels of school administration. And I just said, tomorrow, if it's 75 and sunny, we're going to cancel because I'm going to be out biking like this. And actually, I never received pushback on that. People be like, I wish I could be you, right? I wish I could be you. I said, I'll catch you up in a day or two later. It's no big deal. But like, I have to bike. Like, I just love biking. I will bike 4,000 miles a summer. And it's just so ingrained in me now. But before, Megan, back when I was like, 2012, 2013, the PBS meet, I would bike 5 miles and I would be winded and I'd be like, this sucks. I don't like doing this. I'm so tired. Why am I doing this? Now I bike 70 to 100 miles, literally in a day. I'll bike 100 miles in a day. I'll be like, I love this. I'm so excited to plan for a bike trek. But it was weird for me because I also had people abandon me, and there were people who came back later and tried to like kind of rebuild the friendship or connection, but they didn't understand, like, why would you leave at the top of your game? And I said, it's kind of like Chris Borland. So Chris Borland is from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Actually, I
Yeah,
went
I
to
don't know who
school.
that is.
Okay, so he was a linebacker with the 49ers. He played one season and then he left. And he said, I don't want to have, concussions. Like, I don't want to deal with this later in life. I actually went to school with Russell Wilson. He was in a few of my classes.
Oh,
Russell
really?
Wilson. Yeah, the
Wow.
quarterback of Denver was in a few of my classes when I was doing my PhD. But it was one of these things that was really hard for people to grapple with. And some people stayed with me and some people just like abandoned, like.
So you talked about people who were disappointed and abandoned you. Were there some other people, maybe some friends or family, who said, Wow, Dave, I'm so happy for you that you decided to do this, because I was really getting worried about you.
There were absolutely people came forward, and especially I call it the people who are in your corner. They really reveal themselves during that time, right? And they kind of look and say, like, Dave's got a plan, like this in a 5-year image, like this will all look good, like this will all work out. But yeah, I did have those people in my corner, and I'm so thankful for them. Um, so
Yeah, you
yeah,
found out who your tribe is.
you do find
It's
out who your tribe is, and
uncomfortable
it's weird, Megan,
to
because I've
figure
had
that out.
people now try to re-enter the tribe after kind of like distancing themselves early, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not quite I'm not quite ready for you to come back into my tribe, because right at a tough time. And I will also say this, like when all of that went down, my dad was awesome, right? And I talked to him and said, like, let's take a father-son trip. Like, we'll go to state parks, we'll stay overnight, and let's like spend like 2 weeks, just you and I, like doing this stuff. And he was up for it, right? So I had this awesome experience with my dad, who had had a heart attack at my house in 2012. And I remember, the ambulance coming, and they said, where do you want your dad to go? And I'm like, he has to go to like this hospital, and driving down there. And I didn't know if he'd be alive or not. And so it was kind of like this thing of like I had this extra time with my dad, and we sat on lawn chairs above this like railroad that was down hundreds of yards from this campsite, the state campsite, and we just had this great time, a couple hours talking. And it was, and I'm like, that would have never happened, had I not put myself first. And then also, like, since then I've lost, 30 pounds. I'm extremely fit, right? I bike, I'm hauling firewood, and I'm just happy. And so for anybody listening, right, I think that's the thing. Like, if you're in a situation where you're not happy, where you don't think your health is where it needs to be, like, it can change. Like, you can change it. And I did it. And right, and what other people think, that's kind of secondary, because you will have those people who will emerge in your corner, who will be very overt supporters of you, and people who kind of like fade away because they're not used to seeing, I guess, the superstar exit stage right. Um, and it's kind of
Well, yet
weird.
another one appeared, it sounds like, because their idea of Dave wasn't somebody who could do a 50-mile ride.
And I wasn't even that person, Megan. I mean, I looked at the bike, and I kind of like, snarled at the bike every time I saw it in the garage. I'd be like, ugh. And now I'm like, I'd spend an hour like fine tuning the bike before ride, and I map out all of my trips beforehand. And it's just, I feel I'm biking past, like last year, I'm biking in the country, and there's farmers who are harvesting hay from a field, and they have a big like combine type device, and they're out on the road. And I'm like, I stop, and they're like, hey, like, we'll move all the stuff, you can get past. I'm like, I can walk the bike past. No, don't worry about it. But I'm just like, it's so incredible to do this, to be out there and to see deer and eagles and snakes on the road and turtles and things like that. Um, and I remind people, I teach right now, I'm a university professor. When I teach my legal classes, a big part is spending some time reminding people, don't lose yourself. If you ever get to a situation where you're up, especially during COVID. I was teaching superintendents, they'd be like, I'm 24 hours a day, right? I can get a text or a call, somebody tested positive, now I've got to shut down a second grade or something like that. I'm like, you've got to take care of yourself. And I understand all of these systems, but remember, like, you are more important than this. And that's my main point to people. I got to work, Megan, at the School for the Blind in Wisconsin. I became their head of therapy services after I had left this high stress position. So I come into this position, and I have no idea, right? I don't know how to read Braille. I don't know cane technique. I don't know any of this, and I'm pretty scared. And I will tell you, that was the best job I ever had in my life. I absolutely loved it. On days like today, where it would be 70 and sunny, we'd be out on tandem bikes with the kids for an hour, biking around the town.
Oh, because of the lifestyle of this job.
Oh yeah, it was. So when I came down there, and of course I had this massive expertise, and we built out they had endowments for therapy equipment. So we built indoor playgrounds, like in this huge, campus, right? We did and I knew all this stuff, right? And and it was funny because I worked with a team of people who'd kind of been down the same path as me. They were like rock stars in districts and then had exited and now had come back to a place that was like really safe. We don't have a board of education. You can just be your authentic self. And I love the job. And I'm like, for me, my life would have been incomplete without having that opportunity. So, to this day, I'm always so thankful that I had a chance to, work at the School for the Blind, to be a leader there, to be one of the administrators. The kids were absolutely awesome. And, it was a student who taught me Braille, right? And I would go down the hallway and I tried to be very quiet because if the student recognized me, she'd be like, okay, what is the letter E? Like 6 dots. Is it 2 over?
Pop quiz.
I'm like, I don't know. So I still have on my phone to this day, I still have a Braille app where it'll give you words and you'll have to like spell it out in Braille underneath. I still have that. But that to me was, if I wouldn't have had that in my life, and also school safety, right? What I do a lot of, it was a non-negotiable. School safety for students who are blind. How do you do fire drills? How do you do intruder drills? We had a 2-alarm fire at the school and I was there, and everybody evacuated safely. We were able to, get buses to get kids back to everything was fine. And I just said, there were so many levels where, looking back, if I would have continued on the path I was, I don't know, heart attack, obesity, just, general, so negative, and this change. But so we have a few questions, Megan. So we have Solitude Surfer asking, what is VOS max?
I think what they're meaning to say is what is your VO2 max? What is your ability to consume oxygen? And that's a very common fitness marker. I would just do a quick YouTube search on that for a nice 2-minute, very complete video on that, but it's VO2 max.
VO2 max. Okay. And then we have Mrs. Wayne saying, Megan, how do you stay motivated if you are a mom?
Well, Misty, how to stay motivated to stay fit, I'm assuming, when you're a mom?
Yeah, I think that's what she's asking. How do you stay fit?
Yeah. So one of the things I love to do is I love to sell fitness. And you have to know what people's incentives are. So what's an incentive for a mom? A mom is trying to keep her head above water and have all the energy to complete a task list that's always too long and there's never enough time to do. So I would say to a mom, imagine if you get up in the morning and you do your exercise, you put your own oxygen mask first, and you feel like you're a superhero and you've got enough energy to power you through your day. As opposed to when you wait till you're the last person to serve yourself and you don't have any energy left and you can't get on the bike and you can't go to that Zumba class and you can't, even turn on the TV. You're motivated for what? For your family. You're motivated by your kids. We just naturally put ourselves last. So if I can spin it as, you'll be a better mom, you'll be a more productive mom if you stay fit, if you're strong and your VO2 max, your cardiovascular endurance is higher. How does that sound to you? And you get nodding heads. Now, what's interesting with grandmas, because grandmas often really put themselves last and they don't want to do exercise at all. I will perhaps shame them and say, well, imagine if you continue not to do any exercise and you don't walk. What's your body going to be like in 10 years? And their face just goes, ooh.
Right.
Are you going to become a burden to your family? And, they're silently nodding their head. Wouldn't it be a great gift to your family to give them the fittest grandma, the fittest mom who's going to be able to take care of herself for as long as possible? So that's a different tactic because the incentive is different. That makes sense.
No, it does make sense. So Megan, let me come back to your story of tell us your fitness and wellness journey. In your biography, you said you had lost weight, and for your sons, you wanted to be fit, and you kept the weight off. So, I guess what was the realization point for you of saying, you know what, I need to become fit, and I need to make a commitment to this for myself and for my family?
Well, for me, that's how I was putting food on the table. So I had to get fit. I was making more. I saw the connection between me making more money and getting fit. I was a single mom, so I had a lot of incentive to improve our financial state. Um, the the food component of it was, I guess, easier as I started to realize I had to manage my macronutrients, meaning my proteins, carbs, and fats. And that realization helped me to get the boys to have an early education about how
Yep.
to do that. So we would, because I didn't have enough time or I'd be too tired at night, we'd go to eat at a Whole Foods, and I would make I had a placard for each of the boys that was colored with red for protein, green for greens, yellow for carbs, and maybe like a pink for dessert.
Okay.
That showed the ratios. And I said, okay, boys, you go around and this is what you get to fill up on your plate. So they knew they couldn't just fill up their plates with mac and cheese and
Okay.
dessert. They had
Right.
to, and they would police each other. Oh, you don't have enough of the red on your plate. You got, and you need to, mom's going to make you put more greens on your plate. So that was helpful because I could educate them about how to start better habits earlier than I had, because I don't know about you, but I didn't know anything about proteins, carbs, and fats, what those were growing up. That was not part of our education.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that either. When I grew up, we had spam sandwiches, right? So frap some spam and white bread, hamburgers and stuff like that. So
Standard
yeah,
American diet, or the
standard
sad
American.
American diet.
I was clueless, and of course, college was just a mix of
Freshman 15.
freshman 15, Taco Bell Tuesdays. I had a friend who worked at Taco Bell, so right, like you could extra food there. Um, but yeah, there wasn't any awareness, and especially when I was really like burning the candle kind of at both ends on in my administrative position, there was no shame at that time of stopping at the gas station on the way home, filling up with gas and going in and buying like 3 donuts, right? So I didn't know anything right about carbs, and now I'll say, like, when I go out and bike, like, I know to bring a green banana because
You
the
need the fuel.
the
You
fuel in
actually
it,
need it.
it's going to burn a little bit lower. It's very right. It's very scientific and specific. Like, I've researched exactly what I bring with me, and I also know, like, I'm not going to cramp up my calves and my hamstrings. And basically, I can get off the bike after a 70 or 100-mile ride and put it away and be like, fine, like after that. And I bring 2 gallons of water with me, which is pretty crazy. That's 16 pounds of water. But, uh, so when I take, share photos when I'm biking or a picture of the bike, like the bike is very much designed to get to carry like all of these things with it. And it's amazing though, to understand, and I can actually find, Megan, when I'm biking, the point in time if I start out on like a cup of coffee, like a 24 ounce of coffee and a little bit of carbohydrates in the morning, when my body kind of switches over to burning like the bile and stuff from the body, like it starts to burn fat. I can actually detect when
You
that
can feel
happens.
that
I
shift to
can
ketones.
I can feel it, and
Yeah.
I know that it'll be for like about 10 miles and I'll be switched over, and I'm so aware of that, which is amazing. And as I said, like, I'm 30 pounds lighter than I was. I'm extremely fit. Like I said, I carried 15,000 pounds of firewood. Did concrete work last week. I'm 51, right? So and honestly, like my 51 is significantly better than 31 or 41, significantly better. Um, so
So
let's,
here's a question, Dave. Are you in the
yes.
minority? Are most of our peers better now in our 50s than in our 30s? And unfortunately, I think statistics show you're in the minority. So we're in this kind of interesting age right now, because, you know, we had talked about, you wanted to ask me about social media and how that's affected fitness. And social media is a tool, right?
Yes.
It's a tool that we have available to us. We have so many tools and we have so much information, which is what you address in your velocity of information book, which I asked my library to please get this book, and they got 3 copies of it in our large library circulation, which is really cool. So I'm hoping other people are reading that book.
Thank you.
To go back to that, so in theory, we should be fitter, right? Gen Xers should be more fit. And I think we're seeing 2 tracks. If we can make a crude observation, we're seeing people like you who are taking advantage of all these tools and all this information that's available and saying, wow, I can be a better version of myself. And what you described about how you prepare for your bike rides, you're honoring yourself as a machine that needs a certain amount of fuel. You need water. You're not just a brain. Whereas perhaps in your former identity, you're a brain that's attached to a body that did stuff that you're not really aware about, because it just automatically takes care of itself.
Yes.
But I think, unfortunately, and I know from going to my last high school reunion, most of my peers have gone the other way, and they've become worse versions of themselves, to the point where I didn't recognize a lot of people because they gained so much weight. And you think, how can that be when we have so many tools? There are trackers. Our phones can do so many things for us. They can remind us.
Right.
They can motivate us. What is happening? Why is it that diseases of affluence seem to be taking over? Is it our attention spans, or do we not really have those intrinsic desires to feel better? Are we just are people just giving in because they're overwhelmed? Certainly the pandemic was extremely challenging for people, and you saw some people reacting right away. Their gyms were gone. Okay, some people just hid under a blanket. They gained their COVID-15, and other people went out and bought all the gym equipment that they could.
Right.
2 completely different reactions to an instant scarcity. So it requires us to ask a lot of questions about, are we a fighter? Are we someone who flees? And so that it depends on what kind of person you are, and the person that you are revealed itself. But unfortunately, that's not the majority.
So that's a good point. My daughters are both dancers, right? So
me too.
Okay, so they've taken dance classes since age 3, and now my oldest daughter is 16, right, and my youngest daughter is 12, and they are very particular on practicing, right, and they're very much students of dance, which is amazing. But we went to a local, I don't know, community event, right, where I don't know what to call it, like just a community gathering event. I forget what the name of it is, but I live in the 3rd oldest town in the state, so it had something to do with, like, you know, the canal days or something like that. We have a canal.
Some historic event.
Some historic event. And my oldest daughter said to me, as we were going up and getting some food, and this wasn't a comment made in jest or to deplete people, right? She was just saying, Dad, like 50% of the people here are obese. Like, just look around. And I saw it, right? And it wasn't it wasn't the statement to be again trying to undermine those people. It was just an honest observation. And I said, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, holy, like, and these people were lining up for the food station because, like, this is why they came there. And it wasn't a reason we came there. We came there for the activity, not for the food. The food was kind of secondary, but it was something so overt. So let me ask you this, Megan. So as a former school administrator, somebody who teaches school aspiring school administrators, right? And it's kind of it is very strange because states like California have gotten rid of physical education, and the reason they did that is they overtly said this makes students feel uncomfortable about their body profiles and things like this, and students with disabilities. And as someone who was a special education director, I said there's no special education student out there who would say I don't want FIED, right? Or I'm conscientious about FIED because I have cerebral palsy. There's no kid who says that. So you're just making this up as the adults. But so what do you think motivates kids and teens in your professional opinion? Like what motivates kids and teens to become
This is a
fit,
scary
engaged in fitness?
subject because the stats are showing that 80% of teens are not getting enough exercise.
Yeah.
80%. That's frightening. And what are we doing? We're removing PE.
Yes.
Making it easier and easier to get out of PE. That's what I noticed in my boys' schooling. So what's happening? Now, I noticed recently that Pokemon Go has made a comeback. And so some of the kids right now are running around because they're on their phones trying to get points. Is that going to be enough? Unlikely. So we know it's what motivates teens is the same thing that motivated us, is being cool. So
okay.
What's the connection to being fit and being cool? And there is less and less of a connection to your physical vitality and your social status, because the kids are, as everybody knows, they're addicted to their phones. They're getting more and more ensconced in their virtual reality and more interested in their virtual presence. And it's a tragedy. So it's hard. I've got you mentioned in my bio, I've got 2 fit boys. They're involved in sports. My youngest plays varsity basketball, and my other one is a gym rat. I don't know if that's because of my influence or just their genetics or what, but I feel so lucky because so many of my clients tell me about how their children, that they can't get their children out of their rooms and off their computers.
Right.
Yeah. Everyone's got fit thumbs.
Right.
How's that going to help us? That you can't lift firewood just with your thumbs or levitate. So I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah. If these kids ever want to do a firewood type training experience, kind of like a camp, just let me know, Megan, because every fall, at least 2 weekends, I've got that going at my house. And it's pretty crazy because after I get done hauling, in total about 25 to 28,000 pounds of firewood, I'm like, I'm just amazed I'm able to do that. And then one of my friends said, like you have to kind of measure out the square footage of where you're putting this because it can kind of break your concrete. I said, I've never thought about that. I don't need to wake up with the side of my house gone because I stacked too much firewood. But so how about people? So you talked about kids in their teens and
yeah, we didn't talk about millennials.
How about 20s, millennials, elderly people? Like what motivates them?
Well, so I'll address elderly people really quick. And I did talk about it. Elderly people could be boomers now, that they're just scared that they're not going to be able, they need assistance to get off the toilet. Just basic things. Now, what elderly people are also suffering from is loneliness. So when I was a fitness director and I was in charge of finding as many ways to find a fitness solution for anybody who walked in that door, we had a lot of older people, and what they wanted was community. So group fitness, I think, is a great way to kill many birds with one stone, where there's a structure where people are expecting someone to show up, where they get to know people know their names, and they're keeping them moving. So have you heard of a program called Silver Sneakers? It's a national program.
I've not. Silver Sneakers. Okay.
So Silver Sneakers, I'm not sure who, I should know this, what government entity organizes Silver Sneakers, but most gyms will honor a Silver Sneakers membership, which provides free access to any senior, and they can they can work out in the gym, but often what they like to do is have access to their group fitness. So for any of your viewers who have elderly family members or friends and they're not doing anything, I'd have them check out their local gym, their YMCA, and see if they have a Silver Sneakers program. A lot of seniors are deathly afraid of just walking through the door. So when I've managed gyms, it was really important that everybody from the cleaning staff to obviously the fitness staff thought of themselves as a fitness concierge, that they're an integral part of that elder person's experience, and that was the habit of they were being greeted by the door with their name. That was critical. And we were always on our staff for getting to know people's names, because that's where the experience started, not when they were lifting the weight or huffing and puffing. It was the totality of that experience. And I find that for seniors, that's even more important. So that's what seniors and I think young people have in common, that the social aspect of the fitness experience is as important as the physical experience. Now for millennials, what we saw was millennials were perfectly fine with the pandemic because they just went to their phones. They were staying home to work anyway. So they just plugged into whatever virtual tool was available to them. And it's been very hard for the fitness industry to pull those millennials who have a lot of extra spending money, to pull them back in the gym. They said, no, we're fine on our Peloton bikes and using our mirror apps and doing the Nike apps and just doing push-ups and squats and calisthenics, and foregoing all that expensive equipment in the gym. So the fitness industry has had to pivot quite a bit by offering a blend of a digital interface and mixing that with an in-person experience to flex that for when you don't want to stay home. And so I really admire how clever and how creative the fitness directors have had to be to keep people coming into the gym. And it's been hard because a lot of fitness gyms have closed. They've had to close facilities because the millennials didn't care.
Really? Wow.
Mm-hmm. So like with the Peloton bikes that track your fitness, that before the pandemic, they had 1 million subscribers.
Okay.
That almost overnight went to 6 million. Which
Whoa.
is incredible. And the Peloton bikes are expensive. They're a couple grand. You're paying another $40 a month.
Right.
But the millennials have that desire to either get fit or stay fit. Probably more than any other generation. So they're staying fit, but it surprises me that they don't care that they have the state-of-the-art equipment, that they're happy to stay home and do a yoga program at home and do just a body weight workout without the equipment. So that makes me a little perplexed, and I don't know what that's going to look like.
So what age is that? What age fits into that?
What millennials are like late 20s now to 40s, I think. It always changes, so I have to refresh that to remember what ages those are.
So what you're saying, Megan, is like they're content with staying at home and kind of doing their workouts and not.
Would you say that that's what your face validity tests show, to use one of your terms?
Yeah, so face validity is one of my terms. I guess, I mean, I personally, for my own fitness, like I am a solitude fitness person, right? So I do fitness on my own. And especially like biking, right? People will be like, hey, like, can I bike with you? I'm like, yeah, not really, because I have a certain pace I want to go. I can change things up as I'm biking. I bring a podcast along on a external speaker, stuff like that. I'm like, so,
so you're more like a Gen X where you want to hit your own goals.
I do. And also there'll be times when I'm biking where I'll be like, okay, for the next mile, I'm going to bike like 20 miles an hour, right? And then I'll kind of monitor my heart rate. But all these things, right? If I had somebody like with me or a couple people, I'm just not into that for workouts. And it's not anything with my appearance or fitness or anything like that. It's just like I kind of know what I want to do, and it calibrates and curates in the moment. Um, so how about yeah?
Going back to what motivates people, like if I was your coach, I'd know Dave is someone who's very data driven, and it would be really important that I show you what your progress is.
Okay.
But not all of my clients are like that. I know a lot of them are driven by me asking them how they're doing, and incorporating attention towards their life, and the fitness becomes kind of almost a secondary goal. So because as a fitness professional, our biggest obstacle is compliance.
Okay.
Are you going to do what I want you to do? And I've got to know what drives you, what scares you, what motivates you, and I have to tailor that for every person. As I said, there are trends with the different generations, but I have to know that to figure out how do I get you to stay with this when I'm asking you to lift heavy weights and do uncomfortable things.
Yes.
Now, when I've taught group fitness, that's more edutainment. That's putting on a show. That's a completely different motivation. I've got to have the right, the right music that fits that generation, that gets them going. So it really depends. Like for you need the right bike, you need the right equipment, and that's more important to you than the social interaction you're having with somebody, because like you said, you're doing it often by yourself. So I think for people, whether they're asking themselves, how do I motivate myself? Socrates said, know thyself. Just know what motivates you, and don't worry about what other people think you should be doing. Because at the end of the day, if you don't like it, you're not going to do it. So I always want to find out, what do you like to do? What did you like to do when you were younger? Because yes. I look at fitness, there's two components. There's moving, and then there's lifting hard stuff that you don't like to do.
Right.
So I will prescribe strength training that almost nobody likes to do, except for the weird people like Drew Bay.
Right.
And then there's moving at lower intensities for long periods of the day. And for that, if you like to walk, great. If you like to swim, okay. What are you willing to do for long periods of time? But you got to come in and do some push-ups at least once or twice a week.
Absolutely. So Megan, how about with social media? Do you feel that people will want to, like, hey, here's a picture of me after I worked out in the gym, and like, and other people are like, hey, like, that's great, like, good for you, or you're looking great. That is playing a part where, I guess, how has social media changed fitness in your over your career? Like, is it where, I guess where I would think it's going to be people. I mean, I do this. I don't post pictures of myself. I'll usually post a picture that I have my bike and like some scenic background, right? Like, hey, like bike, 70 miles today, and like, here's whatever. So are people, is social media like one of their driving influences? Like, hey, just worked out or whatever, and then a couple thumbs up, and it's like, yes.
Well, let's look at women, for example. Let's put the men aside.
Okay.
Women don't like to see other women surpassing them and getting and losing weight or looking better. And this is a dirty truth of being female.
Okay.
So social media, when other women are posting their amazing results, you feel some scorn.
Yes. Why?
Why?
Why are you doing that? No, I get it.
You and Eric can do a whole episode on evolutionary psychology and
yes.
what motivates women. That's a whole nother show. So I think it works kind of in backwards ways. So if your bestie is posting her weight loss results, and you're not excited about her. You're upset that you don't have equivalent pictures to post. So that can be motivating, because you're always trying to be the best of your friends.
Absolutely.
It could be from that standpoint. Also, I in talking to women, as their self-esteem goes down, as it's associated with how they look, they don't want to post pictures of themselves on their social media. So it can be a motivator of just knowing, wow, I'd really love to be able to be proud to post a picture of myself, of how I actually look, without doing all these Elizabeth Taylor like lighting tricks.
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's a complicated thing. I don't know. Has social media helped? I don't know that it's been a huge net helper in that way. I don't think so. I think it's added to the stress of how we should be, instead of focusing on how do you want to look, how do you want to feel, what's going to boost your self-esteem, not comparing it to other people. So I think it's a double-edged sword.
I think you're right on with that, Megan. I think people are, when they're interfacing with social media and fitness, the question is, what do I have to gain versus what do I have to lose, right? So if people are affirming me and I'm posting some things, that's great. But what if I post the photo and suddenly people come out and they're making negative statements, right, about me and how I look, right? It's one of these things I am amazed at when I look at different news stories, right? And there'll be the comments thread underneath, and people just kind of like go after somebody for something. You'd be like, whoa, like they should be supporting this person. So we have a Elephant Armpit, who is a regular here on the show, says Gen Z seems to pay much more attention to the food they eat and staying healthy in general. I would guess social media influencers have a pretty big impact on not just the realm of vanity. So when you're helping people, do you have any idea if they're like kind of calibrating themselves? Oh, I want to be like this person who's on the internet, or like this celebrity or whatever. Are they trying to have that as kind of their guidepost, or their lighthouse, right? That they're trying to become somewhat aligned with this person, or this, or like, or they see like a
I
Drew
agree
Bay,
with
or they
that.
see you. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the Gen Z focus, having a focus on physique and looking a certain way, and they're a lot more educated because they've got YouTube University available to them, and they can watch their favorite influencers talk about. Every influencer seems to talk about what they're eating.
Yes.
That's something that when we were growing up, we weren't asking the celebrities, our favorite celebrities, what are you eating? But now that there's so much content out there, and there's so much curiosity about all aspects of your favorite person's life, I think that has had an influence on young people. So perhaps they're more educated because they have that available to them.
Megan, do you remember the movie Smokey and the Bandit by chance with Jackie Gleason? So yes, he ate a Diablo burger during that, which I don't know if that's healthy or not. Nobody knows what is exactly in a Diablo burger, but yeah. So it's
well, Jackie Gleason's
Jackie
body isn't any indication.
Right.
He may not be be our go-to.
Jackie Gleason did not portray on film that he was kind of the most fit. So what are mistakes that people make that just kind of eviscerates their motivation? What do they do that just sabotages their motivation? And what advice would you have to people, someone who comes into you, Megan, one of your clients, and says, listen, I just want to give up. I tried to do whatever, or like, in my case, like I remember one day I biked like literally 5 miles, and I got back and I was all winded. I'm like, screw this. Like, I'm not good. Now I bike like 100 miles. I feel great. But what makes people want to just say like, forget it. I'm done. This is me. I'm not going to pursue this anymore. And then how do you help people to kind of reassess that position and be like, think about this, come back, recalibrate, and to help them not to just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
What's hard is often the fitness professionals don't get to see people when when they've gotten to that dark place, that's when we get ghosted. So where we pick them back up is after they've hit that rock bottom, and then they've decided, well, I can either say my life is just going to suck and it's always going to be like that, or I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to try again. And that's usually when I talk to somebody, when they say, I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand the state that I'm in. Not that they've lost their motivation. I usually don't talk to people when they've lost their motivation, because that's when they're giving me lame excuses for not coming in. And I can't call them out as a liar. Work is really stressful. Things are going on with my kids. They're just giving me excuses as to why they're not coming in for their appointments. Now, hopefully I've figured that out before I've seen the red flags before it gets there, but not always. And it's not our responsibility to ensure that every man is saved. So if you get to that point where like you're just ready to throw in the towel, it's hard to yank somebody out of that. They really have to hit that rock bottom, which is kind of an unfortunate feature of the human condition. But if we can talk about what happened before, how do we not repeat how you fell off the wagon? What are the things that got in the way? So I can help you with that. The other answer, I'm still trying to figure that out. But one of the things that I really try to nail down with clients is being specific. People will say, "Oh, I want to get fitter. I want to get stronger. I want to get healthier." Okay, these are all kind of broad brush statements, and it's very hard to tell whether you're actually doing the things that will lead you to that very general goal. So I'll ask them, what does that mean to you? How will you know when you're healthier? What biomarker, what goal that do you want to achieve, so that we can tell if you've rung the bell or not? So specificity, that's a word that I use all the time, specificity. And then once we look at what's a specific goal, like maybe it's a scale weight. I want, instead of I want to lose weight, what does that mean? 1 pound? Are you happy with that? Or are we talking 20 pounds? Because you don't know what that person, I may think, oh my gosh, you could stand to lose 100 pounds. And they're going to be elated by losing 20. So we have to be aligned with what those goals are. And you have to kind of keep people's feet to the fire on what that is, because that's uncomfortable. Because people know once we start setting a specific goal, now we have to set a specific plan. So I'm sure all your listeners have heard of the SMART planning, of something that's specific, that you can measure, that's attainable. And we just map that out. How would I know whether you're on plan or not? Oh, I'm going to sleep more. Okay, what does that mean? Where are you at now? What box could we check off to know whether you're building these micro habits? So we get down into making logbooks and figuring out what is attainable. I'm big on the whiteboard.
Yes.
Because you can see it. It's in your face. I have whiteboards all over the place, and it drives my kids nuts. But we live and die by the whiteboard.
Right.
So I just recommend that to a lot of people, because I don't like using the phone. There are many habit trackers that are available that can remind you that you have some accountability towards. So accountability is a ubiquitous word when it comes to achieving goals. Who are you accountable to? Because we're not accountable to ourselves, unfortunately. So we often need something external, and that's why people will go to a personal trainer, because they need external shaming. We want that to be intrinsic, but if it's got to be extrinsic in the beginning, okay, so be it. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of setting big, hairy goals.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate, because it gets demoralizing very quickly. So I just try to encourage people to set a 6-month goal. And then what are the weekly activities you need to do daily or weekly to hit that target? And then you set the goal You set the goal then. Because a lot of people will just say, I know, here's a handful of things that we need to do. So one of the things I do with clients is I have a flashcards that have about 40 different strategies in regards to health, or we'll say diet and fitness, of things that you can improve. And I have them very quickly put them into 3 stacks. Here's something I know I need to do.
Yes.
Here's a stack of things that I'm not sure maybe I should be doing. And here are things I refuse to do. Okay, good. So we've now whittled this down into 2 stacks of things you know you need to do. And I'll ask them, okay, let's go through the maybes. Do you have any questions about that? We'll talk about those things after we talked about it. Have any of those strategies moved into, I know I need to do these things? Okay, so now we may have a dozen things in the, I know I need to do these things. And then I'll ask, is it reasonable for us to expect you to flip a light switch and now start drinking a gallon of water a day, or making sure you've had a pound of vegetables a day and that you're sleeping 8 hours a day? No, you'd be totally overwhelmed. So we start with the micro habit. Which 1 to 3 things could we add this week that will move the needle forward? What's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck of all of these things? And often we talk about food because people think, oh, I just need to exercise more. If I just did my elliptical for 45 minutes every day, that's going to get me closer to looking better. Not really. It's probably going to be looking at what's on your plate at least 80% of the time. So we'll prioritize goals. And then what motivates people is once they start seeing gains quickly,
yes.
I'm all about getting gains fast.
Yes.
So the planning is critical, that we aim for the right initial targets. Whereas a lot of people think, oh, I just need to move more and eat less. And I get so exasperated when I see an overweight person jogging. I feel so terrible, and I just want to pull over and help that person, because what's going to happen is they're going to jog for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then their knees are going to ache, and they're going to say, oh, this jogging is terrible for me. And they just go back to the way they were, when that's a terrible entry point for people. But that's kind of what we've been programmed to do. Oh, I got to move more and eat less. So now your metabolism is going the wrong way, and you're doing exercises that are too much force for where you're at now. So I just threw a whole bunch of things at you.
No, Megan, that makes sense.
Oh, one thing I want to add is this Fitbit thing.
Yes.
So I have kind of a love-hate relationship for these Fitbits, because I think it's great. I think one of the things that boomers especially have improved is policing their steps.
Okay.
And am I getting 10,000 steps? And I think that's been wonderful, because I hear a lot of chatter about that from my parents' friends, from my boomer clients, that they talk about that, they can see it, and it's attainable to go, oh yeah, I used to be 3,000 steps, now I'm getting 5,000 steps, and I got 10,000 steps, and I put that on my Facebook page. That's awesome. And then I see people whose goal is largely to lose weight, and they think that if I just get enough steps in, that's going to take care of everything. So they get completely obsessed with what their Fitbit says, and they're looking at maybe not the most ideal target for what their goals are, and then they get demoralized because they're doing everything the Fitbit says they should be doing, and things aren't moving for them. So I see a lot of my female clients get addicted to that, when we need to be talking about food intake.
Absolutely. And I've seen people who have, acquired a Fitbit or some kind of smart device, and then they get on some kind of leaderboard, and it's this competition. But I've seen it go both ways. Like,
yeah, it can be helpful. It can be very helpful.
They've been really motivated, but then if they are lagging behind somebody else, it can kind of be like, and
yeah, if you're not at the top,
right,
then like it's a leaderboard. Who's the leader? When second place should be phenomenal, because if that's
right,
producing better results than what you were getting before, then then you're a winner. But the way we tend to look at competitive things, it depends. Like that wouldn't motivate me to
Yeah,
be
I
the
mean,
top of the leaderboard.
personally, like, people will ask me, do you log your bike treks, right? Do you put those out there and there's some website, like a couple people who, bike, and they'll say, I can upload it to whatever. I'm like, yeah, I don't really get into that. I said, there's a component of that which might be interesting where I can kind of have this archive of places I've gone and stuff like that. But I said, really, like, as far as like motivating me, that's not it, right?
But I guarantee you there are private Facebook groups of bikers who do want to compare how much
Yeah.
mileage they put in, and it does drive them. In fact, I have a friend who is a colleague of Drew's, and he used to train high intensity in London, and his niche market were white collar executives.
Okay.
And he used to, okay, you're not supposed to do this, but he would put all of their charts in an open file cabinet, or have them
Wow.
available for any of them to look at, because that motivated them to beat the other guys. Now that's not normal, but that competitive spirit does drive some people. And you've just got to figure out what drives you. Is it the experience itself? Or is it being able to check off the box? I have a lot of people who create lists, so because you get a dopamine hit from checking a box of completing something.
Yes.
Great. So
Yeah.
do that.
Megan, so I was teaching a class on Saturday, and we had this assignment. It was about shared vision. Now, granted, like, this doesn't have anything to do with fitness, right? But it was school stuff and whatever. But one of the things I stated in that activity is, I said, you know what, from like an airline perspective, right? From a pilot, you're probably off course 90% of the time. And then and this is a quote from Stephen Covey, and I have a friend who's a pilot, and he said, yeah, this is true as long as, right, you're flying by like landmarks and stuff like that. You're off course 90% of the time, but as long as you're moving like west, like that's your goal, and your fitness goal is west nutrition, you're in good shape, right? You don't have to hyper calibrate every moment of the journey. And when you get within like the last 20 miles, yes, then you'll hone down and get to the runway and stuff. And it was amazing, because when I shared that example with people, I could notice like it was resonating, because people felt they had to be so hyper analytic from every step. And I said, that's what absolutely will derail you. You will not hit
Suffering from perfectionism.
Your perfectionism. You won't, and you won't hit a couple goals early on, and then it'll feel like a defeat. And I'm like, the only thing you need to do now, right? The only thing you need to do is keep flying west. And as you get further along, like, it'll be, things will make sense, but do not like micromanage this, right? And I thought that was liberating. It was the first time actually I had approached it this way. But so people had submitted their assignments to me, and I'm grading these assignments. I'm like, oh, like, they're way too micro. Like, this will never work. If you come into it with this approach, you will burn out. You'll feel like a failure. Like, you'll feel like the system failed. Like, this isn't the way. And also, in that case, it was interesting, because I said, like 5-7 years from now, you're not going to be the one. Now in fitness, it's different, but you're going to hand the baton off several times. So you have to just set this kind of broad base. But so Megan, tell me about one case, one time when you worked with somebody and it kind of surprised you, like they either like just totally blew your mind on what they set for their goal and what they accomplished, or like, you looked at them and thought, they're not coming back, like they've checked out, and suddenly like they roared back. What was one of those stories that you can share?
Let's see. I worked with a young man who's kind of on the spectrum, and he started working with me. His mom was working out with me, and she was so frustrated with her son's inactivity. She said, maybe you can help him. He's 18. He can't keep a job. He's just so unfocused and so unmotivated. And maybe he can come in and you can work out with him. And he came in, very tall, lanky kid, and he had such a hard time with this high intensity training, which if Drew's exposed you to that, it's very slow movements. Imagine doing a push-up 4 seconds positive and 4 seconds negative. It
Right.
takes a lot of motor skills to be able to do that, and he had almost none. And I thought, this is a kid, I just don't think I can help him. I don't
Okay.
seem to communicate with him. And I got him, I encouraged his mom to have him do some neurofeedback, which I had some experience with. So he was doing some neurofeedback, and that seemed to stabilize him a little more, stabilize his mood. He was less anxious. And then after he did that for a little bit, he came back in and started to do more training, and he did a little better. He was doing a little better. And oftentimes we'd have to completely stop because his legs would just completely shake, and he'd be convinced that his body was going to just implode, and we'd have to stop and do breathing exercises and meditative exercises for him. And there were times that I honestly wanted to throw in the towel, that this is just too hard of a case for me. I can't get him consistent enough. But I stuck with it because he seemed to enjoy coming, and I would schedule him at a time that after he was finished with his workout, I could eat lunch while he sat in the corner and recovered. And after maybe like a year and a half, he got a job working at Amazon, and he kept this job. And I was so amazed because his other attempts at working would just be start. So he just get too overwhelmed. Kept this job. He was getting slight promotions. The next thing I know, this kid, this young man now, has a girlfriend. He's moving out of his mom's place.
Whoa.
And then he and his girlfriend are moving in together, and he went to school to do accounting, and he got a job as an accountant, as doing bookkeeping for a restaurant. So that took about 4 years for all of that to unfold. But that was so meaningful to see him go from a very underperforming young man who, gosh, if he could even just remember to show up in my studio on time, sometimes that seemed like a miracle. To be living out on his own with a bookkeeping job and a girlfriend was enormous progress. And for me, I like to do strength training for people, especially people who haven't lifted weights, because it builds inner strength. When you see that you can lift heavy things beyond your comfort zone, you find that you can do this in other areas of your life. And this is kind of where my life coaching bleeds into the personal training. And that's really satisfying to see people have hard conversations with their loved ones, because we've talked about it, and I just coach them to use the same approach that they use in the weight room in their life with relationships or at work or setting other goals. So that's just one example of people consistently staying on track and just continuing to try. While you may have little mini failures along the way, if you're consistent, you should progress in many aspects of your life. So that's why it's fun to do what I do, because I see that progress with people.
That is awesome. Megan, I interviewed Mike Dahl, who's the head of Wisconsin Esports. And so esports, video game based sports, kids together and things like that. But one of the things Mike mentioned to me was, he said, Dave, one of the top athletes in esports is a student who is a quadriplegic, who had a mouth adapted controller made for him, and he's ranked in the top tier in our state. He said, actually, I played him and he beat me. So this was an interesting thing too. Do you tell me, people with disability, right, either from birth or acquired disability, and you interface with them at fitness, how does that work? Somebody comes in when they have mild cerebral palsy, or they've had a stroke, or post heart attack or something like that. Is it that the disability has propelled them to fitness because they're afraid I don't want to lose more. I don't want this to happen again. Or do they come into this with some kind of like extra strength, right? Like, I'm going to propel myself now to overcome this challenge, or what do you see with that?
I usually
Because
don't get that attitude of the kind of hero attitude of, well, I beat this, I can do it, I can overcome any mountain. I usually don't get that. It's usually because someone is depressed because of their state, and somebody else has recommended, well, why don't you start working with Megan? I had this issue and that issue, and she's very creative, and she found ways to modify a workout for me. Now, I've never worked with a quadriplegic, but I have. One woman I worked out with was 86, and she came in with a walker. Her son would have to bring her in, and we were really limited with what she could do, because she could hardly get into any of the equipment. So the walker was her station, and we would do. So everyone knows what a walker looks like, right?
Yes.
In strength training, there are three major planes of movement. You're squatting, you're pushing something, and you're pulling something. And this is called the big three. If you can do those three things, that's a total body workout. So I would find ways for Ruth to hit the big three somehow. And so we do a squat with her walker, where she's just going up and down, or in the beginning, she would just squat and hold it. Yeah. So she used that as stability bars. We put the brakes on, and she'd just bend her knees, and she could probably do that for 12 seconds. And she'd stand up, and I go, okay, Ruth, take a couple breaths. We're going to do that again. She'd squat, and then we get up. That was a leg exercise that is still hitting the quads and the glutes and maybe a little bit of calves, but she was getting stimulus from holding these positions. Now, someone, let's say, they've got a lot of joint issues. I deal with that a lot. So not as extreme as you were talking about, but I'll ask somebody, flex your bicep. Because everybody can do that. You can flex your bicep. Now just continue. Now don't just flex and relax. I want you to flex your bicep with light effort. And I'll say 30% effort. Just hold that. 15 seconds goes by. Now flex it harder, 50% effort. So maybe I can't move my arm, but I can contract that muscle. I may be able to contract my chest. Maybe I don't have, if I don't have hands, right, and all I have are my arms, I have carpal tunnel, and I'll take a block and I'll squeeze it. I'm just squeezing the block, mentally contracting my pecs.
Okay.
Or pushing like this. Yeah, you could do that. Anybody can do that and sustain that. That's actually that's firing your muscle fibers in succession. As you continue to do that, that's a workout. So we can do things in the chair. And I'm one of these crazy people, and I'm just talking to people at a restaurant, and maybe they pick up that I do fitness, and they'll say, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do this, and I can't do that." And don't tell me you can't do things, because I'll find a way for you to do it. So there are lots of ways to contract a muscle with your volitionary contraction. Yeah. And if you can do that, use your imagination. You can contract your glutes just by thinking about it. Your glutes, even.
Okay. So Megan, I was a basketball coach for 7 years, and
is that right? Wow.
I was, I used to have. I have the trophies over here from a couple of years we won league, and one of the things I taught my players, because it was taught to me, is when you're on the bench, imagine that you're in the game, right? Imagine that you're receiving the inbound pass or whatever. Like, keep yourself in the game even though you're on the bench, and that's, I don't know, it seemed to work.
I'm a big believer in visualization.
Yeah. See yourself making the steal, hitting the shot, or, where you would be on defense. And I remember, I thought that was very effective coaching, back at that time. And, so Yes.
So from a sales perspective, that's where I would take somebody who's dejected. Imagine yourself doing the activities that you just told me you miss doing. Imagine doing that, and imagine maybe we'd come up with an in between like activity. Imagine just doing the stair climber for 5 minutes a day, and how you're going to feel in a month when you can just do that stair step or that stair climber for 5 minutes a day, and how much closer you'll get to being able to summit Mount Rainier, if that's your goal. And
Okay.
and I think that does something to the brain to help motivate that person to actually to visualize them doing it, and it moves the needle closer to them than starting to do the things that will lead them to ultimately to that goal. I don't know if you were going, that's kind of where you were going with
No,
that.
no, I'm with you, right? Imagine it. When so something on Saturday when I was talking with my aspiring school leaders, right, in classes, I said, well, I asked how many of you have ever presented before your state legislative body on a hearing, right, for something, and they're like, none of us. Like, how many of you have? I mean, and some of this is a little bit of a setup, right? Because I've been on PBS national television a few times. It's not, but like, how many of you envision yourselves presenting before your state assembly on a bill which is having to do with school funding, right? Which is pretty ubiquitous, like that happens. None of them, right? So I said, envision yourself, and then I actually had an activity where we did it for 4 minutes. I'm like, here are the questions, like say what your name is, why you're qualified, are you for or against, a personal story, and then a fact. I'm like, and that's it. Like but it was to have people like, this is where you're at. This is the room. These are people. They're not going to cross-examine you. This isn't a court hearing. Don't worry about it. They want to know from you. Like, this is a good thing that you're doing. And when those activities were done, students would do that. Something happened that I didn't expect would happen. People clapped. Their fellow peers, like, not just clap like this, the golf clap. They were clapping. They're like, good for you, Eduardo, for just doing this pretend. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to accomplish. I want you to feel that. I want you to envision yourself doing this. And also, I'm going to tell you, like, I've done this several times. It's not terrifying. It's not whatever. There's no catastrophic mistake you're going to make. But people, I shared with them. I said, people, no one's ever told you this, right? No one has told you what's possible. And sometimes people, I think it. And until someone kind of says, yeah, like, you can do that, you can go for it. Like, you can write a journal article, or you could do this, or do whatever, or testify. So there is this thing, I think, as a coach. So as a coach, you're the one who's setting that primacy, right? You're saying, like, you can do this. And I honestly think a lot of people have never been told that. And I believe this from when I speak and I testify on discretion. People do not believe that they have the discretion to act in their own best interest. And so as a coach, as a fitness coach, as a fitness mentor, how do you see yourself in that, of just telling people, you can do this, it's not impossible? Because I think people talk themselves out of it before they even get one step down the road.
Yeah, what you do and I do I think are very similar, because you're coaching your students to see themselves acting in a certain profession that may be several steps beyond what they imagined. And yeah, and I'm doing something on a personal in a personal realm. And while I can be the cheerleader and say, yeah, you can do this, they may go, I know you think I can do this, and I know that there's a probability that I can do it, but I don't know if it's likely because of all the failures I've had in the past. And then it just comes down to what do you choose? What are you going to choose? You're empowered to choose the route of, oh, it's not likely to happen, or yeah, I'm going to choose to be a person who tries. And I'll put pressure in that moment of, who are you? Are you a person that tries hard things, or are you not? And what are you modeling for the people around you? Because they usually know something about their family. They have kids. What
Right.
what are what would you want your kids to do in that situation? Well, I want them to try. Well, so why wouldn't you take the very attitude and the very advice you'd give to somebody else? That's a strategy that I often use on other people. If someone else had the goal that you have, what would you counsel them to do?
I'm going to write that down. Okay.
Because people know the answers. They actually don't need us. Thankfully they need us, because we all need to make a living.
You tell
But
them.
most people have that wisdom. They just turn it inwards.
Kind of a tacit wisdom.
Yeah.
I like that. Now
people know what true north is. I don't know. Is that a Stephen Covey thing? True north?
It makes sense though. So the researcher Gary Klein in the 1980s, I wrote about this in, I think, my first book, School of Errors. But so Gary Klein sent university students out with firefighters in Los Angeles. You couldn't do this today, right? But in the 80s, so they're riding along on the fire trucks, and he said, document when decisions are made while fighting a fire. And then, so one of the things that got to be really perplexing was when people would be on a roof. I was a firefighter also, so this resonates kind of strongly with me. But when people were on a roof and they would be like, time to get off, and then like they get off, and a minute later, like the building would collapse, right? And so Klein was noticing this. Students would say, like, there wasn't a call from the chief, there wasn't 3 blasts from the fire engine or whatever that typically would tell you to do this. People just knew, firefighters just knew. So they would interview the firefighters and they would say, so what was happening? Was the roof kind of getting soft? They would give these things. They said, no, we just knew it was time, right? We just knew the roof was about to go. And it was strange because it was this strong tacit knowledge, right? There were signs that they were reading, right? Maybe at a subconscious level and things like that. But I think getting people in tune with that, right? To pay attention and not to be zoned out to what the subtle tacit knowledge, they also call it gut instinct and things like this. Those are often correct. Like in my research, like in Velocity of Information, School of Errors, like those 90% of the time, right, your tacit knowledge is steering you in the right direction because your body's trying to pattern things, your mind and stuff like that. But Gary Klein, that was an awesome study. And they would work with firefighters, are there certain words here like soft or heat or whatever? They're like, nope, we just knew it was time to get off. And so it's one of those things too, like, right, if someone is working through fitness, I think when I worked through my own kind of fitness challenge, which would have been maybe like 2013, 2014, I just knew, right? I just knew I wasn't feeling well. I also knew I didn't look well, and not look well to like what other people would consider, but also as I would look in the mirror, like, holy smokes, like I just do
This
not.
is not me.
This is not me. And then, as I shared on Marion West when I did the interview, I walked maybe 10 miles a day for 2 years, and suddenly, then I dropped down to maybe like 180, and now I'm probably like 205, which is really kind of my functioning, I think, appropriate weight, right? But yeah, it was this tacit knowledge. You kind of need to recognize that and have, and
it's hard because we're all so unsure. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't trust ourselves, and social media is telling us this is right. This is how to be a guy. This is how to be a girl. This is how to be a human, or whatever terms we're using these days now. And I think there's so many people who have lost that trust in themselves. So if we're able to kind of go to a quiet place and just listen, and I don't want to get all woo woo because I don't think your show is oriented that way, but I'll have conversations with clients and I'll ask them a question and we'll sit in silence. And a minute is a long time, but if that's what it's going to take for a truth to come out, it's much more powerful for their truth to come out versus because Megan said so. And it's taken me a long time to get to that place. My art of coaching has evolved drastically since I started, 30 years ago. I used to be just a finger pointer of you must do this. And now
Right.
I'm asking questions to find out what's right for you. How can I help you figure it out? It's not what I think is right.
I like that, Megan. One of the things that I do, and I've learned this from other people, is um, help me to understand, you know, um, why why you're struggling with this assignment, right? Why you're struggling with this budget assignment, or why you're doing this. And it's kind of like sometimes you'll find out like it's not the assignment itself. It's because if I present this in my district, I have a very strong like principal who's going to be like, I need this for my building and whatever, and that's going to be very confrontational. Okay, look, well, thanks for sharing that, right? So let me help you frame that up a little bit. So like when you're, you know, presenting to your superintendent or board of education for funding or whatever it is. But I often tell people too, like I said, I've been through a lot of crazy stuff, right? And when I wrote School of Errors, this was the book that I knew would end my career in school administration. And I was kind of at that point anyway. But you know, when you take on the $3 billion school safety industry, and then I spun this into a PBS presentation, I said there was no going back after that. Um,
You were
and I,
coming out. You were coming out of the closet.
there was that book was, you know, but I said it's the book that after Uvalde, right? Austin PBS, you know, was playing daily, San Antonio PBS, and people from Texas were emailing me every day and saying, thank you for writing this. And, you know, I was getting contacted by different states, their head of safety, you know, stuff of saying, um, you know, what have you done since then? Like, how can we become more informed? And I'm like, you know, and I was very honest in the book. And when I narrated the book, you know, which was amazing too, because I listened to it, I can hear my own, you know, energy come into this of saying, it's crazy to do a tornado drill where you have a barn fan and you're shoveling gravel in it so kids can have the real experience, right? Um, but so I want to go back to when I was a kid in the 1980s, well, kind of an older kid. We had the Presidential Physical Fitness Badge, and I think I still have one somewhere. They don't do these anymore. But when you have what is your thought about when people are pursuing fitness, right? If you do a badging type thing of you're saying if you do this for so long, we'll, you know, give you a certificate or we'll put your name up on a board or, you know, whatever. Does is that effective, or who does that reach where they have to have the overt badging to bring them, kind of keep them motivated to keep that feedback there?
It depends on the social circle that you're in. So if you're in a school, maybe that motivates certain kids to get that kind of recognition. I know that at many of the health clubs that I've worked at, we'd have 90-day challenges, and the people who would lose their maybe 10 pounds or more in a biggest loser competition that you have just in any health club, and you put those before and after pictures up, that's really meaningful to people to see that visual marker of change. I don't know that we have so many awards today. I think that awards and those badges don't carry as much weight.
Okay.
That's my opinion. So I've always focused more on giving that person the meaningful validation from the people from whom validation is meaningful, not just some, you know, everybody gets a trophy kind of award. So I have mixed feelings on that. I don't know. What do you think?
I go back to kind of like video game designers, right? So video game, and not only for kids, right? Because we know like a lot of people that play video games are in their 30s. I think that's the average age. Is they build in reinforcement very frequently. Dr. Sean Dickers was a guest on this show, also consulting the video game industry, and people respond to that, right? And also people respond to quirky things like being motivated. Oh, like you're playing this game and you didn't feed your dragon. So Billy, like, you didn't feed your dragon, so you have to pay like for 2 tokens. And I don't know, because I guess I don't get into that as much, but
well, my son is playing Pokemon Go, which drives me
okay.
crazy. But that does seem to motivate him to get these little emblems of things that shows that he's gotten this token and that token.
Yes.
But that's very specific to a game that's meaningful to them. Now, if we're on the topic of fitness, how do you make that? How do you translate that into fitness? And I don't think you can do it as just a fitness achievement, because that's too broad. So in the past, I remember as a kid, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was,
Yes.
I remember exactly where I was when our PE teacher said that Arnold Schwarzenegger is now the chairman of the Council on Fitness from George Bush. And I thought, oh, well, the actor, that's kind of cool. And that had some impression on me as a dumb 10-year-old kid. Now, and that probably made me work a little harder in PE that day. But do I remember anything after that? Not exactly. And did my parents respond to Schwarzenegger being named the chairman of the Fitness Council? I don't know. I know that I think that JFK and RFK had done some kind of campaign to promote fitness, and they hiked. They had some kind of long hiking campaign that they did that was televised, and since JFK was such an idol, I'm sure that had some impact on people's attitudes towards physical activity. But would that translate into, oh, if you go so many miles, you're going to get a JFK award?
Right.
I just don't think so. People like to get very unique awards for things. So if you blast that into a national campaign, I just get so sick of government waste. I'd hate to see a lot of money being spent towards something that was well-meaning, but didn't really have an impact on large numbers of people. So when we had talked about that back and forth, I don't know what would work. I just think these things kind of happen organically, that some activity just takes off, and we notice in hindsight, wow, people were really going after such and such award. But I don't think they're pre-planned. I think they just happen.
Megan, let me wrap things up with this. So you and I receive a phone call, and it is March of 2020. Oh, here I am. It's March of 2020. And so it's a call from the White House, and they're saying, David, we need you to participate in this committee for the National Fitness and Fortitude campaign. And also Megan's going to be on there. And a few other people, right? And I'm like, whoa, okay, I'll be there, right? So it is March and April of 2020, and start of the pandemic, right? And when I wrote in the Velocity of Information, I said, I think there was a lost opportunity for the country to come together. And we know that we had this back in World War II. In 1942, the Committee for National Morale was put together, and people can look at that or whatever. But let's say that there was this committee that was put together in March of 2020, and the purpose of this committee was, let's get people into fitness, right? Because we know that people, it's an axiom, it's a truth, right? We know that people that are more fit are less likely to get sick, and if they do get sick, they're likely to not have as extreme consequences because of that, right? So why would we not want to do that? Actually, Dr. Fauci had said that, and I had quoted that in the book. So they get us together. We're part of a committee of maybe like 10 people. Let's say what, and they're saying, okay, in 2 weeks you have to release this Fitness and Fortitude campaign that's nationwide, right? What do you think could have been done on a campaign like that?
And we're stuck in our homes?
Well, yeah, people are stuck in their homes. They are deemed essential, non-essential, or essential. But listen, we want to put this. We can get media out there. We can get celebrities. We can get companies on board. Amazon, all these companies, um, Google, whatever. But we want people to become more fit, right? To become more resilient to the virus, and we need your help. So, how should we approach this? What's the motivation? How can we get this out there? And again, we've got like 2 weeks to launch it. What might be realistic if that would have been an actual national campaign with ample resources, right, to make this happen for, let's say, Megan, 2 months. We
2
just have
months.
to get this out
Okay.
there for 2 months.
Okay. So do you remember the We Are the World
I
collaboration
do.
for AIDS? You remember that song, We Are the
We are the
World?
world.
Yeah.
We are the children.
And you had all these celebrities gathering all together. That was a big deal at the time, to see all these celebrities on one stage. That was an incredible coordinated event.
Yes.
Now, if Nike and maybe 20 top artists came together with a song about moving, about keeping your body moving, and that all these singers and celebrities who can't sing, they're all participating in, and this is produced, let's say, by Nike, not my favorite company,
Sure.
Just Do It theme, and it's promoting an app or some program where everybody's doing, they're walking around their house, walking and listening to this song. They're just doing this over and over again. And then they stop and they do a circuit, and they do some kind of modified push-up. And they go, there you go. And you're watching Lionel Richie, who's maybe 85 years old right now.
Right.
He does a modified push-up in his
That guy is fit.
multi-million-dollar kitchen. And then he stops and he does 5 squats.
Okay.
Modified squats.
Right.
You're watching all these people do squats, walking around, push-ups, I don't know, and flexing their biceps or some silly thing that people can resonate with. And they're just moving. They're moving because we're stuck. We're like, all of a sudden we became imprisoned. And not everybody has stairs in their home. I always tell old people, don't move to a rambler. Keep at least a 2-story home so that you have a gym in your home, which is your stairs. Not everybody has stairs, but we can all walk around, at least in circles, to move. Something like that, or there's like this stupid dance that goes along with this pandemic shuffle that you do.
Right.
Has squats and push-ups in it. And people are doing that and making videos of themselves singing.
Oh, yeah.
And showing their video, and those go viral. I guess that's the best I got. I don't know.
No, I like it. I like it.
Music really moves people.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm not here to cause no trouble. I'm just here to do the pandemic shuffle. Dun,
yep.
dun,
Look
dun.
at that. That's
yeah.
The pandemic shuffle. We got it.
Wow. So Megan, how can people learn more about you and anything you want to share?
Well, I don't think people need to learn more about me, but what I'd love all people to learn more about is the importance of strength training.
Okay.
And like I said in the beginning of the show, Drew Bay was an enormous influence on me. I think I'm sure his lectures on high intensity training are still available on YouTube. I would learn as much about the importance of strength training, because we talk a lot about moving and walking, but keeping your muscles challenged isn't something that we spend a lot of time talking about. So high intensity training, any safe weightlifting, that's what I like to promote.
Okay. Awesome. So Megan, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show, and there was a lot of prep work that went into putting this together. I've benefited from from following you on LinkedIn and your posts. And again, Drew Bay is a mutual friend of ours. Drew Bay, from Wisconsin originally, right? So um, I've get emails almost daily, updates that Drew shares on high intensity training, and Drew's had an impact on my own personal fitness. So I appreciate that. And again, Megan, thank you just again for making time for this. This was an awesome show. I'm going to go through and put together notes from this show, but what motivates people, and also I kind of I'm ingrained now, kind of a 1985 Chicago Bears Super Bowl shuffle of how that would be, because people did go for the celebrities, right? The celebrities were coming on and saying we're all in this together and stuff like this, but actually, right, had the celebrities or Jimmy Kimmel and things like this, like all come together and had some kind of uniform across some music and some activity and stuff like that. I think that's an awesome idea. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't there
only
at
we
all.
could go backwards in time and produce such a thing. Gosh, you and I'd be famous now.
We would be, and I'm a big
Pandemic shuffle.
fan of Back to the Future. So if that ever happens, whenever I sign a book, Megan, I always put the date and my location in it, because I figure if somebody time travels, they can come back and meet me and say like, "Hey, Doc, like if this happens to you in 1988, like go with it. Like this is where to go." So people are like, "Why did you do that?" I'm like, because of time travelers, right? Time travelers. We want to do this. So Megan, by the way, it is going to be 74 degrees here in Wisconsin tomorrow, which is probably our last 70 plus degree day for the year for October 11th. That's pretty rare. I will be out biking, and I am just thrilled to be able to do that this late in the season, because it's pretty rare that weather is accommodating. We're about 3 weeks away from snowfall here where I live. Actually,
Yeah,
that's
what do you do? What do you do in inclement weather? Do you have a stationary bike at home?
I don't bike, and I did have a setup where I could put my bike and have resistance and all that, but I just found it to be too boring. So actually, I do the old school stuff of putting cleats on my hiking shoes, and I will go out and I will either hike. We have some hiking trails by us,
That's great. You cross
or I
train.
will walk. Yeah, and I love doing that. I don't love winter, so that is an absolute, like, I would much rather not deal with winter and cold weather. But because we do have that, we have lakes by us, so it's kind of weird to hike past a lake and see all these ice shanties and little smoke coming out and people like ice fishing. I'm like, this just seems so weird. Like I'm just not into this. But yeah, I do hike in winter. Have a huge like navy pea coat that I wear and stuff like that. But there is a specific kind of, as I would say, kind of a solitude, a kind of benefit in that. Things become very kind of crisp and serene in winter, at least in Wisconsin. So I find benefit in it. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't wait until April when things like thaw and I can be out biking again. But yeah, I just have a great time, kind of being outside doing that kind of stuff. So anything before we close here, Megan? What do you love about this book, Megan? You got it from the library, and they're like, "Here, Megan, we have 1 of 3 copies. We're about to get 10 more copies in." It's kind of
I
everything
think
for
that
us.
was just a phenomenal response to the pandemic to write a book like that to help people with this overwhelming world event. Yeah, your way of explaining things is really powerful. I'm looking forward to reading. I haven't gone through the whole thing yet. Remind me of that photo. What was
This
the caption on that one?
this is a park just down the road from us, and it was all encased with
Oh, yeah.
yellow police tape.
Yes, yeah.
And I
Yeah,
took
that's not, now you're reminding me about
my
that.
daughter to it. Yeah. So and so
I just loved how the theme of this book seems to be trust your common sense,
yes.
which seems to be a rare commodity these days. Common sense has become uncommon. And this last 2 years, we've been inundated with people's opinions about things.
Right.
And whereas your book really challenged people to be objective and challenge yourself. Am I falling into the group think? Or am I really checking in and doing these member check-ins and asking other people to keep me in check? And I liked how in the beginning of the book that you acknowledge the people who you checked in with. Is this valid? Was what I'm writing seem valid to you, as opposed to just expounding your own opinion? And I think we need a lot more of what's a word for that? Just accountability of information. There isn't a lot of cost for people to just throw out willy-nilly opinions. And my best friend and I were talking about truthers and people who make all these outlandish predictions. And wouldn't it be amazing if someone was keeping track of all these predictions and there was some actual skin in the game and money on the line for scaring people into this, that, and the other thing? So I think if people had to police their public statements and really evaluate them and check them before just throwing them out on Twitter, we would have a safer, more prudent society.
I like that. I have 471 citations in the velocity of information, and they're all done as endnotes. So like if you're reading the book, you're never going to notice them. They're just like a 1, 2, 21, 22.
Yeah, it doesn't interrupt your
right.
the reading flow, which I like.
And that to me was very important, because and honestly, there's only been positive response to the book. People come back to it and they will dig through the citations, and I said, it's been fascinating to me, Megan, because people forget much of, I don't know if it's forget or they just block it out, but one of the early chapters is essential versus non-essential. And the book states that on March 20th, 2020, everybody was deemed essential or non-essential by their government. And people be like, oh yeah, I guess that did happen. And then like, right, your gym's closed, right? You're forced to work at home or not, be out as much as you were. What was social distancing, and just the effects this had on people from a physical standpoint or a psychological standpoint. And I didn't expect that when I start to present with the book, right? I thought that would be a common point. That's why I moved it up to be like the 10th page in the book. And nobody denies it, but people are kind of shocked when I bring them back to that. And so the book has this phenomenal kind of truth aspect to it, because it is so strongly cited, and it has 12 interviews, and I have timelines that were custom built for this, I believe now the book is gaining this momentum after the fact that people are coming back and saying, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And
it'd be a great book for a time capsule, because you really captured this shock of what we're going through, and what the challenge has been to how do we move forward when the game has just completely flipped upside down.
Yeah, and what I remind people is, every decision you make going forward is based upon essential or non-essential. Am I going to take that flight? Am I going to book a reservation 6 months out? Is my child going to might go to a college where they're going to choose a profession that can go online, right? All of these decisions are, am I going to live in Seattle? For example, I interviewed a realtor in Seattle, and she's in the book, and she said, people who lived in high rises said, I don't want to wait for the elevator, socially distanced, like one at a time. Forget that. I'm not going to do that. So like all of these decisions will stay with this generation for 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, that word essential, that was not an essential word in our vernacular until March of 2020. What is that even? What is essential? I have no idea. I've never thought about this. I'm not essential. Wait, what does this mean? What is essential to me? So it is just forced us to evaluate our lives, for better and for worse, but better in so many examples.
So Megan, we have so many people in the chat just saying, thank you for being on, and just how amazing amazing you are, and I echo that.
Well, thanks, because I told you, I said, oh, I've never done a podcast. I don't think you want to have me on your show.
No, you're phenomenal. So Megan, thank you so much for being on the show. This show will be out in MP3 tomorrow on Podbean and Leveled Audio. The blog post will also be out tomorrow. And yeah, please, please check that out. Please share this, because this is very important, not only for each of us, but people that we know, right? Somebody who is contemplating a fitness and a wellness decision in their life. Help inform them, right? Or help get them to the resources that can inform them. I think that is so important. So
yeah, and if any of your listeners, either they themselves or somebody they know is struggling to put together a plan, my website is meganusui.com, and I do online coaching for people. So I could certainly get that conversation started.
Okay, so Megan, I'm putting this here in the chat, MAGANUSUI.com. Let me actually just quickly move it over to the pinned tweet for this. So all this technology, Doc. Yes, believe it or not. So there we go. It is the pinned tweet.
David,
good.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is fun, and you make it easy to be a first time.
Awesome. Well, I love to hear that. So Megan, I am going to take us out right here. So, and hopefully you and I can touch base in just a moment. But everybody, the Safety Doc Podcast, thank you. 190 episodes in video, in audio, in podcast, post to the blog site, which is safetyphd.com. Thank you so much for making the dream come possible. I love doing this. I love all of you. Thank you so much for everybody. Bending Ballistics, Aztec Twins, Elephant Armpit, Solitude Surfer, Ting. Thank you so much. We are out, and I will see you on Monday, October 17th. Thank you so much.
How were the beans and chili that you had for breakfast?
They were delicious. Thank you for asking. But now I am very gassy.
I'm sorry to hear that. Who let the frogs out? Pew, that stinks very bad. I have to open the window. Oh no. My cap flew off and it was sucked into the engine.
Holy smokes, the engine just cut out. We should use the Decide model to help us make the right decision.
Mayday. Mayday. I am declaring a beans and chili emergency. Please advise for landing.
Flight 019er, 2 miles northeast. Turn left at 90. Maintain 4,800 to establish an approach.